Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show on this the 19th, Tuesday the 19th of January 2021. Thank you for tuning in. Now, listen, normally I do the market report, but I've been through the markets today, and there's not a whole lot of change. The stock market's up just a little bit, and prices are fairly stable and things. And so I'm going to do something a little bit different this morning. I'm going to talk about what is the biggest danger to humanity right now that could really take us out seriously as a species. We've created a situation in the world that allows a certain type of event to take us out as a species, believe it or not, by a trigger, a chain reaction of events that could happen that could actually take us out. And what's the problem? What is the probability of this event happening? Very, very high. And very, very soon. And I'm going to explain to you guys what it is. Now, you're probably thinking, well, maybe it's some sort of big rock from space coming down and hitting us, some big meteor or asteroid or comet that's too close to the Earth and wiping us out as a civilization. Well, those events do happen. And they happen quite frequently. You might be thinking to yourself, well, it might be a volcano like Yellowstone blowing up and taking out humanity, or it might be the nuclear arsenal of the world has taking out humanity. No, that's not really what I'm referring to. And those dangers, I do not see them as being imminent. You might think, well, maybe it's a virus could come. Well, you know what we found out about viruses is if they're too deadly, they're not effective at spreading. And if they're not deadly, then they're not such a big problem. And they have to fit into a sweet spot with viruses. And this one we just went through or are going through right now, called COVID-19, hit that sweet spot exactly where it spread all around the world. So it was a big, enormous problem. It's affected the world's economy adversely. But we're muddling through it. So, no, what I'm talking about is not viruses. I'll tell you what I'm talking about. It's an event that happens very frequently. But it's an event that normally goes unnoticed. All through most of man's history before the Industrial Revolution, we've had these events periodically every few hundred years. It happens. But we don't notice it because we don't perceive anything without technology. We do not perceive this event. But back in the 1800s was the first time we had enough technology where we were able to record this event and perceive it. See, normally when this event occurs, if we don't have any technology, we're walking through the woods with no shoes on, and we might live in a hut someplace or something, and we can't see this event, we can't smell this event, we can't hear this event, we don't even know it's happening. The next day, life goes on as normal because, well, we don't have technology, and we don't have electricity, we don't have... This event is a geomagnetic storm from the sun, which normally, all through history, they haven't been recorded that much because we didn't know they happened. We were just sitting around a fire like a normal day, gathering wood and going out and hunting and everything else, and an event happened and it passed by us and the next day proceeded and we didn't even know it happened. But electronics knows it happened. Now, if we go back to the Carrington event, we want to talk about it a little bit. When the Carrington event happened, it was a massive solar storm, and it says it can wipe out almost all of our modern technology, and we only have hours to prepare. Electrons swept up with so much detritus in the magnetic current coursed through the telegraph wires back then. See, that's the first technology we really had. And when they met an obstacle, like the hand of the telegraph operator, they crashed through it, delivering a sharp shock. Papers in the telegraph office caught fire. Does that tell you the magnitude of the power of this? That now we don't have any computers that could take that kind of a shock coming back through the system. All of our laptops would be fried instantly. All of our cell phones would be fried. All of our cell phone networks would be fried. All of our, if this kind of an event occurred today, it would be instantaneous. We would only have a matter of hours to prepare, and we can't prepare the world for an event like that in a matter of hours. It would hit, and it would fry all of our cars. All of our cars would stop. And the computer inside our cars would be fried. And there's no way to get a car running in the modern cars, the type of cars we have today. If the computer's fried, you need a new computer. They've geared the cars that way. And, it's a shame. In the old days, we had cars that could possibly make it through a Carrington type event or a solar storm. And the cars, you'd be able to maybe, they had what's called points and condensers in them. And they had a rotor, and the rotor spun around. That's what fired the engine up, They've removed all these systems out of the cars now, and they've put in computers. And the computer runs everything. And this event would fry all the cars' computers. So all the cars would be useless. All the trucks would be useless. All of our electrical systems are not impervious to this kind of attack, and our power grids would go down. In turn, in the chaos of all of this, if we had one of these events today, what would happen is we wouldn't be able to tend our nuclear plants properly. Because the people that tend these plants, generally they live within the radius of where they could drive to the plant, and every day for work, and they wouldn't be able to get their cars going. There'd just be chaos everywhere. And the nuclear power plants, they need to be serviced or they overheat. And then what happens is something called the China syndrome. Everything would basically come to a stop if an event like this hit today. And cause a chain reaction. Like I say, I've hinted at the chain reaction that would occur. The side of the world that would be facing the event would get hit the hardest. But what I want to talk about for a minute here is the frequency of these events. Now, if we go to 2012, the solar storm of 2012 was a Carrington-type event. The same kind of coronal mass ejection that causes these events. So basically what we have on the sun is we have something called sunspots. And they happen a lot, quite frequently. But what happens is pressure can build up. Magnetic pressures and stuff can build up underneath these sunspots. And the magnetic pressures can cause these massive storms to occur on the sun and blow electromagnetic material off into space. And it's basically like the sun is firing a bullet off into space in any different direction, depending on what area of the sun it's aimed on. And these occur very frequently. But generally they miss the Earth. It's like that mass of ejection that's flying out into space indiscriminately flies on by the Earth. And that's what happened in 2012. The solar storm of 2012 was a hugely large and strong coronal mass ejection event that occurred on July 23rd of that year. It missed the Earth with a margin of approximately 9 days as the equator of the sun rotates around its own axis with a period of around 25 days. So we did get missed by a huge one in 2012 that would have shut us down. But what's happening is when we create our computers and things like that, our computers are getting so they run on a smaller and smaller amount of voltage. The systems inside the computer, they're the dies in which they make the central processing units. The dies are being shrunk down smaller and smaller and smaller, and it takes less and less voltage. Now, basically, if you get into the fundamentals of this, there's contact points where the electricity actually makes a little jump between the contact points. And as you shrink the die of the computer, you're making these contact points at a closer and closer in a sense of how far apart they are. So as a die shrinks for these CPUs and gets smaller and smaller. Remember when I first started into computers, it was about 10 times further that the electricity had to jump between the dies, in the central processing unit than it is now. And the thing is it takes a higher voltage, takes a more electricity. This is why your older computers, they had less power, and it took far more electricity to run them, and they got much hotter. Some of these computers were great big. I mean, they're desktops, and they took up your whole desk, and you had to plug them into the wall, and the whole thing would heat that area of your house practically. And it was only as powerful now as a little what they call a Raspberry Pi. It didn't even have the power of what a Raspberry Pi has now, and a Raspberry Pi can run off of like a battery. It doesn't even need to be plugged into the wall, and that's how far we've advanced just in the past few years since the year 2000. We've advanced that far, that quickly, into shrinking our dies. But the problem is it creates it so that it's even more sensitive to these electromagnetic disturbances that can create voltage inside there that can just basically fry all of the components. So we're only becoming more and more sensitive. So we come close in 2012 to getting hit with one of these storms. I believe personally that the frequency is about once every 300 years that the Earth gets hit. And of course, the side of the Earth that's my own estimation. It's got nothing to do with the scientific community, but I believe that it happens quite frequently, and it's been missed through history. And the reason why is because up until the Industrial Revolution, we never had any electrical systems to observe these events. So I believe all the way through history they've been happening about every 300 years or so. This is my own personal belief. And that they go unnoticed. So if we take a look at the Carrington event, we had one in 1859, and then we had another one basically in 2012. Well, it didn't exactly hit the Earth, but it come real close. This would tell us, hey, these events occur a lot closer, and they're a lot more of a potential threat to our civilization than the volcano, a huge volcano going off like Yellowstone, or a meteor from space, which probably occurs about every 3,000 years or so, every in a much wider frequency. Not so often. Doesn't occur so often. And we've just, if you were to look at civilization like it was a bunch of ants, we have just achieved this major achievement of advanced technology and put all of our eggs in one basket, basically, so to speak, into a world that's run by advanced technology. What could go wrong? We've done it very, very, very quickly. Even ridden ourselves of cash. Now, take a civilization, for instance. Say we had one of these events, right? And say we were all still running on cash like we were, say, in the year 1990. Everybody used cash for everything back in 1990. And say one of these events actually occurred, and shut down the financial system, turn the power grid off and everything, people would start to use cash as a means of exchange, automatically by default, because that's what they use. But now that we're doing away with cash, we're making one more vulnerability to one of these coronal mass ejection type storms. Because when it hits, all of this electronic money would suddenly disappear and nobody would know who owns what. That's what would happen. So I see the potential threat from this is extremely high. It's something we should pay more attention to. Uh, as far as I'm concerned, all of these nuclear power plants out there that have to be serviced daily, they have to feed water in to keep the reactor cool and everything else, you know. And if they don't, it's a fire that doesn't go out. So if they don't come in, they don't service these nuclear reactors, you know, and they don't give it the water it needs to keep it cool or whatever, or they will melt down. Now they have backup systems and everything, you know, but you have to have operators there in order to run the backup systems, in order to open the valve and let the water cool off the reactors. The whole thing, you know, if everybody left the plant, it's like something out of the Simpsons movie, you know, if they all left the plant and left it trying to run itself. But my big question is who is going to run the plant if we get one of these kind of events? Who's going to come into work? How are they even going to get into work? The car ain't even going to start. Have we thought all this through? You know? We're making ourselves vulnerable to a chain reaction. And what about the event itself? Even if the nuclear power plant somehow were to maintain and keep running through an event like this, well, everything else would be dead. The power wouldn't come on, possibly for months or even years, because it would blow out the big transformers in the power grid. Could we survive without power? Can we survive without vehicles? Because all of our computers would be fried in our cars, and I mean, you just can't replace them overnight. You need technology, and the way I see it, if we were to get a strong one of these events, it would basically shut down everything, and everything would be shut down for good on that side of the earth that's facing the sun. The other side might escape to a certain degree, but we would be in one big mess if that were to happen, you know. And I see it that we haven't safeguarded our equipment against an event like this. We've rushed whole hog into this new modern technology. We've made ourselves so vulnerable to so many different things so quickly by completely giving over to this new technology and leaving behind the old ways. Everybody out there was basically off grid, going back to the 1800s, and able to support themselves. And if an event like this occurred, there would be no big deal. It wasn't any big deal back when the Carrington event occurred. This ho hum, another day, you know, another day. Hitch up the horse to the plow, you know, and let's get out there and plow the field, John. And they didn't even know the Carrington event was happening. They were out there plowing their field. But what about today? With our complete reliance on the grocery stores for food. And sure, it's a very convenient system. But the vulnerabilities within this system is beyond measure. Anyway, I wanted to do this show for you guys. Thank you guys for listening. Like and subscribe. And we'll catch you guys in the very next episode. Bye-bye.